Alright everyone, the CEO of YouTube, whose last name I'm still unable to pronounce properly, so I'm not going to bother, has just said, oh, YouTube's going to hire thousands of more people to look through content on YouTube and take it down. Now, part of me is actually really positive towards this. I know a lot of people, Cullen, I think, tweeted this as like, oh, yeah, you know, they're basically, it's going to be a broad definition of extremist content. Weren't all of us just saying like a week ago in the wake of YouTube saying it needs to do more in the wake of exploitation charges by some of its advertisers, YouTube needs to do more, and the AI doesn't really work for creators? Well, they're hiring actual humans then to moderate the content. I have no problem with that. This is actually probably make YouTube better for content creators. I'm going to tell you why. The biggest issue so far, it seems, with monetization, with, strikes, copyright strikes, content strikes, limited state, restricted mode. The biggest problem for a lot of creators appears to be there simply aren't enough people at YouTube to manually check most of their complaints. It's impossible because the AI is handling it. There are so many videos uploaded, so many accounts, so many videos that are already there to weed through, so many comments made on a second-to-second basis. I can't even fathom how many comments are made on YouTube in the frame of a 10-second period. It must be a six-figure total. It's impossible for actual humans to check the majority of those cases. It's not physically possible. This will lighten the load on the humans that are already moderating it, probably a good thing. However, it could be correct that a lot of this effort, that once again YouTube will direct most of its effort at that sore old dead horse of an issue and keep beating that dead horse into the dirt until its body is completely in shattered form, which is hate speech. I would like to submit, YouTube, why don't you focus on content that is actually criminal and could reasonably get you in trouble? It's going to be a lot worse than having a couple of advertisers flee. By your own admission, you've got like creepos being creepy on YouTube. You've definitely got drug use videos on YouTube. You've got a tidal wave of spam uploaded constantly on YouTube. You've also got people who actually do call for violence on YouTube. It seems that those are sideburner issues to many people in YouTube, or at least the NGOs you're working with, and that the main problem that they have with your site and the content there is hate speech, offensive content, cyberbullying, as though that's a real thing. Just fucking ignore somebody if they're harassing you. If it gets to the point where it'd be criminal harassment, yeah, that's fine. Somebody insulting you once is not criminal harassment. It's them being an ass to you. I'm sorry, but it's not a big problem. The average person's mature enough to deal with that. The average person's mature enough so if they see something that offends them, that if they're mature, if they're actually to be counted as an adult whose opinion should matter, then they're not going to watch the content. They're not going to sit there screaming about it and call up some senator and say, oh, there's mean stuff on YouTube. Don't worry about it too much. As far as and how are you going to define hate speech anyway? It's not 100% clear. The other problem for creators is ambiguity. I'll tell YouTube, the biggest problem I have isn't with your TOS. It's not with enforcement. It's not with glitches. It's with ambiguity. It is ambiguous as to what you actually consider to be in violation of your TOS. You admit the ambiguity when you introduce limited state, which has been so far a complete failure. Limited state just means those videos get 10 times as many views anyway. I'm not sure what the point is. Something is either allowed or disallowed. There shouldn't be an in-between. It's ambiguous. So for somebody like me who covers sometimes touchy political or religious or social issues, it's difficult to know what I'm actually allowed to say on the site anymore. And it didn't used to be that way in the bad old days. It wasn't ambiguous at all. In the bad old days, it was just draconian. In the bad old days, if you were kissing somebody, a little heavy petting, that wasn't allowed on YouTube. Now, of course, I don't have a problem with it. House of Air took them 2 friggin' days to remove. So that was a problem. Here's a marijuana bud. You're not even smoking. You're just barely talking about entheogens. That'd get you put at least to restricted mode back in the bad old days. I can remember it firsthand when I was Botany 101. Just talking about Datura, video gets restricted severely. I didn't even have to say, well, you know, you should use this drug, or here's how you use it. All you had to do is say, well, this is the academic side of explaining what happens when you do use it. That wasn't allowed. Now, of course, you can, apparently, if you're an academic firm, you can get away with doing drugs on YouTube. It's that one Belgian group there that does that. But, yeah, there was no ambiguity. It was just draconian. Now the problem isn't that it's draconian so much as that it's ambiguous. You know, again, when you have Amron and some of these groups, when you have Brother Nathaniel still operating on YouTube, I would say that the rules aren't actually that draconian, generally speaking. The problem is that if someone's on the fringes of the TOS, they have to worry about being raided, they have to worry about, are these YouTube mods just, are the trusted flaggers going to come get them because some person has a personal vendetta? That's another worry. And we've seen it's a literal legit concern in the wake of a Twitter employee saying, well, you know, I'm leaving the job. As my last action, I'm going to ban Donald Trump from Twitter. The President of the United States for 10 minutes didn't have a Twitter account. You know, somehow one rogue low-level employee had that power when leaving the job at Twitter. What would happen? Into some of these people, they make 6-figure, 7-figure salaries by making content on YouTube. What happens if a person's livelihood is instantly destroyed and fucked up beyond all recall by some rogue employee? That matters. It economically matters. These are real people whose real lives are being affected by such things. When you have large users who are getting, you know, harassed, basically, by YouTube's moderation staff over supposedly offensive content that many reasonable individuals I do not think would find particularly offensive. It's not aimed at an individual, or if it is, it's like a politician, it's a celebrity. Who cares if someone is rambling about how much they hate them? Even the CEO there says, oh, well, there's a, you know, we've got to find that balancing point between angry opinion and hate speech. You're never going to find it because people disagree on what that actually means. In some countries, it's against the law to blaspheme. Are you going to, if a bunch of advertisers from like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan raise a stink and say, well, we're going to pull our ads and sell our stock in Google and YouTube if you don't take care of this issue of people criticizing Muhammad, are you going to bend before them? Because, well, we might lose 10% of our advertising revenue if we don't do this. Is that going to be what happens? And by the way, YouTube's content creators and everyone else online, if you support a free and open net, what we need to do is start leaning on these corporations within the United States who do control an inordinate proportion of those ads and so forth. We need to lean on them to make it clear that they're going to pull their ads if respect for free speech isn't restored. That's the way to go forward. If you're not actually willing, and it seems like there's no actual balls in the population to do this, to push for a constitutional amendment, or the declaration of Google as a public utility, which I'm still not even fully on board with anyway, because it sounds like, is government going to come in and be abusive and like 10 times worse? I'm not exactly sure. Will it make it even more insolvent? Maybe so. Will it become costly? It'll be like, oh, $10.99 a year then. If it's a public utility, you got to pay to use it. I don't know. I think it might destroy YouTube, so I'm not on board with it necessarily. Unless it's very, very constrained, very, very clear exactly what's going to happen, a total agreement on all sides. That's what needs to be done. We need to start pressuring these companies too. We can't allow all of the pressure to be coming from people who are the moral equivalent of temperance housewives. We can't do that anymore. We've got to push back. The only way to push back is to make it clear we're going to stop patronizing businesses and entities that don't have some degree of respect for free speech, because otherwise we're going to end up with European and religious blasphemy laws and all this other nonsense imported onto US-based platforms, so that Twitter won't just be censored, it'll be draconian again, like way more draconian. Facebook won't be led by an inept third-generation synth that has a few fundamental problems with his exterior. It'll be led by a shadowy cabal of people who just want to crush anyone who criticizes the wrong corporation or bank. So what'll end up happening? YouTube would end up being co-opted by groups that do not actually care about the creator base, because, you know, for them, they might make more money if there are a bunch of cable services streaming on YouTube and everyone else gets shoved to the side. It might be more fiscally successful for them, so they may not care. We need to do something about that. But as far as YouTube hiring more moderators, it's doing what we asked it to do. All of us content creators said, hey, have an actual human check these reports. It shouldn't just be automated. Well, I'm trying to do that. Go after child exploitation. Well, they need more staff to do that. I don't have a problem with it. As long as it's aimed at the right problems, it itself is a great thing. It's when, after some time, maybe they aim it at offensive bullshit, that's the problem. Hopefully, at some point, look, the CEO of YouTube needs to understand your platform is not invulnerable. It doesn't matter if no one would want to buy it because it's insolvent and only Google can keep it afloat and it's an ego trip, or it serves other platforms, so, we can operate at a loss here, but we make it up elsewhere because we own the service. It doesn't matter. Content creation makes YouTube what it is. That content creation can use a dozen other video hosting sites, some of which have been around for a long time and are technically solvent. There are viable competitors to YouTube. You need to understand this. At one point, people would have said, well, why the hell would you want to use Facebook, which is it's got like modules. It's not really, it's not easy to fiddle around with the way it looks. MySpace is so much better. It's so much more easily customized. And then they changed the way they did business, lost that advantage, and got fucked. Now they barely exist as a company. Case in point, people thought it was invulnerable. It obviously wasn't. Don't take the creators that made YouTube for granted, or there won't be a YouTube. Google may not care too much because of insolvency, but I would think, again, they wouldn't be keeping it around unless it were beneficial for them to have it. So hopefully these moderators will do a good job and be checking up on reports to make sure that content creators are not instantly screwed by an algorithm. And by the way, and this has been echoed by so many different users, I don't even know who was the first to say this was a good idea. I know I said it like a year ago, others have been saying it. Larger creators, people who are verified, who have been on this platform for years, should get the benefit of the doubt when anything is flagged, either by an algorithm or by another user. We should get the benefit of the doubt, and we should get a quicker hotline to YouTube itself if something goes wrong. We should have the ability of quick communication, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to send off an appeal, and a few days later I might hear back. That's not the way that it should work. These are people who drive an inordinate proportion of all of the traffic to YouTube. A few tens of thousands of people generate virtually all of the significant content on this site, other than the occasional one-off viral video. A few tens of thousands of people are part of that group. Probably I think it's like 50,000 people. Probably make 99% of all the viewership goes to them. That's semi-centrality. It's not asking much for those people who are part of that bulk to be treated fairly. Some of these people, that's their entire career. PewDiePie's career is making YouTube videos. So you can't mistreat him too much. Like even kicking him off of that, what was it, that ad service that he had where he got a bigger proportion or something, or preferred advertising or some bullshit like that. Now he's not even apparently a priority user. I would think that's a problem since he's the biggest user on your site. Doesn't seem exactly fair for somebody who's so efficient that they can single-handedly generate a video-making empire, still get screwed for someone whose own cable show doesn't even drive 1/10 of the same audience. PewDiePie, if he started uploading 2-3 videos a day, he'd have ratings competitive with entire networks like CNN. He'd be leaving them in the dust. He'd be leaving Fox in the dust. Oh, Netflix? Ha ha ha, I'm worth more than all of Netflix. That's what he'd be saying. And yet, some of these people, they get tens of millions of subs, they still feel mistreated. Neistat, who I don't even like, but he's right when he talks about these things. He's got, what, 4 or 5 million subs? Some insane total, even people with a few 100,000. They're part of that, top 50,000 or so users that drives most of the site's content. People need to understand this. The moderation of YouTube should take into consideration the duration of a person's time on YouTube paired with how serious their content is apparently so based on how many people are watching it. Somebody who consistently drives 50, 100, 200,000 people a day to their content and has made thousands of videos is probably not a spammer, is probably not going to attempt to fuck around and lose that platform by doing things that are illegal or against the terms of service. It's probably not going to happen. So you gotta understand that. They've got a fiscal ball in the court, there'd be no reason for them to act in such a manner. They're like, hey, you know, I'm making thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars a month off this. Why the hell would they want to push limits? Why on earth would they want to do that? And so YouTube, by the way, should maybe back off on its TOS, let him expand a little further, gobble up more audience to YouTube. There'd be no competitors if you loosen those TOS on so-called offensive speech. Kick those NGOs out that you keep working with. What's the point? It's like, no, like any sane person couldn't tell you what, you know, what is generally considered to be acceptable to say at all online. Well, that's quite a large bubble of things. You're taking stuff from that and putting it off to the side based on what some third-party group says, but they didn't help build YouTube. They're not part of the community. At most, their members have their own personal accounts. Probably got 10 subscribers. That's about all. Peace out.